So, Baruch Hashem, thank God we're holding chapter 17 in Kuntras Hechaltzu, the mimer that the Rebbe Rashab said in 1898. Yes, okay, chapter 17. Here, the Rebbe goes back to what he started with, which is the idea of the Midianites. The Torah says, Moshe, that there was a nation called Midan, in English Midianites. The Midianite, they opposed the Jewish people. They fought them. They opposed them in war. They ultimately lost. But the language in the Torah is such that God says, take revenge of them. So that's very unusual. You know, revenge is not a kind of a Jewish quality. So saying take revenge, there must be a special reason. And the Rebbe in this discourse says there is, because they oppose the essence of God. Whereas all other nations oppose details and particulars. They oppose the Godhead, the elimination of divinity. There's no room for that. There's room for a particular problem, opposition, which ultimately it's workable, Isser, right? You can elevate it, transform it, subjugate it. When it comes to Midan, Klipas Midan, here the Rebbe says that it's because it opposes the Yud Kei Vav Kei, therefore it needs a total elimination, and that's why it says Nikmas Hashem, the revenge of God. And that's what he's going to talk about now more. Let's look inside. When you Klipas Midan, this is the concept of the Klipas Midan. Midan is associated with the words strife and quarreling. This is the concept of separation and division. As we mentioned in yesterday's class, like the concept of baseless hatred, which causes division and separation. This feature, this particular issue, opposes the overall name of the Yud Kei Vav Kei, the Tetragrammaton, as it's known to be, the four-lettered name of God. Yud Kei Vav Kei, Isser. If someone asks you, could you tell me the difference between Elokim, Yud Kei Vav Kei, Kale? You should have the answer on your fingertips. Yud Kei Vav Kei is about Achdus, unity. The Yud is Chochma, the Vav is Bina, etc. Kei, right? Whatever. In other words, and they're all one in Yud Kei Vav Kei. When it comes to Elokim equals 86, which is the same word as Hateva, the nature. So Elokim is God's force in nature. Kael is Chesed. So here the Torah uses the word Yud Kei Vav Kei. So the Rashab says that Midian seeks to obliterate the Yud Kei Vav Kei vis-a-vis division and separation. So when we make or seek to make differences between people, and things, and when it's uncalled for, it's a slap in the face to the Yud Kei Vav Kei. That's what he says. The Klipas Midan Nagel Zelagamri. Klipas Midan opposes the name of God completely. The Garua Yoiser Mihazayin Amamin. And it's a lot worse than the 7 other nations. Shehein, because they correspond to the Zayin Midas Ra'ois, to the 7 bad traits. Ukamaya Taiva takes, for example, lust, Taiva, indulgences, or Vahakas, anger, Viritzicha, murder, Vahagaiva, and conceit. Those are 4 particular traits, no good ones. Shekol echad v'echad poigim rak bi'ois proti m'shem Hashem. Each one, when you get angry, you make a blemish in only one of the 4 letters of God. We say this is in Krishna Shalamita, right? At night, before we retire. I don't know if your minhag is to say it, but in Chabad we say it before Hamapil. And we say that this particular transgression blemishes this particular letter of the Shem Hashem. And this one another, right? That's what he's referring to here. So in other words, indulgence, anger, murder, and conceit, all bad, no good. But each Moshe touches another letter of God. It doesn't touch all 4 letters, because remember, God's most holy name has 4 letters, Yud, Hey, Vav, and Hey. It only touches one of the 4. That's what he says. So too, when it comes to it, when one does a prohibition, one of the 365 prohibitions, it touches a particular letter of God's name. It makes a pagam, a blemish in one particular level. Kol Mokim, the Rashab says, nevertheless, Ksiv, it says, V'noikev, one second. V'noikev Shem Havaya. He pierces one who blemishes God's name. V'noikev Shem Havaya. That's a verse in Vayikra, right? Loshin Nekev. Literally, Isser, the word V'nokev means blasphemous. But the word Noikev also comes from the root letter Nekev, Nun Kuf Vez, which means puncture a hole. Loshin Nekev, Shaidesha Poigim, Beprat Echad, Mishasal Loisese. When you blemish, when you blaspheme God through violating one of the 365 don't do's, Poigim Gamkim B'chleil Shem Havaya, you also make a general damage and hole and puncture in the name of God. Just as this is true. A person has 365 sinews. Kishenoikev Gid Echod, when you make a puncture in one of them, v'yoytze mimenu adam, and blood comes from that particular puncture, harei goyrim chalishus b'chol haguf, he causes an overall weakness throughout the body. So too, so this is a question, this is a rhetorical question. The Rashab is saying that we have a concept that the puncturing of one particular spiritual sinew of God vis-a-vis the prohibition, one of the 365 negative commandments that was punctured, that was violated, makes an impact on the entire body. Just like when there's one area in your body that is punctured and loses blood, it makes weak other parts of the body. Again, it's gradation, but it makes an impact. So his question is, we just said that the particular transgressions of indulgence, anger, murder, and conceit only punctures one particular area, not all of God's name. That's his rhetorical question. And his answer is, his retort is, umikol mokim, nevertheless, nevertheless, although an individual act has a general effect on God's name, Havaya, weakens its influence, it causes an actual blemish only in a particular aspect of the name. In contrast to the klipa of Midan, Mashenke be klipas Midan, shehu inyan hapirut v'hechaltzu, which represents the overall idea of separation and divisiveness. Pagim b'chlol Hashem Havaya, it impacts the entire name of Hashem. So that's how he reconciles it. It says there's a difference between a puncture and separation. You hear that? I need you to understand this, Chevra. A puncture it's a puncture, but it's only a puncture. When you talk about separation and divisiveness, it severs the cord. Finished. Right, Mark? It's like, you're you and I'm mine. You know, I had an experience like this Simchas Torah, with someone on the phone in private said some very, nasty things to me. And I lost all the respect for him. And I had great respect. Now, I hope one day it can be rebuilt. But, it's certain things that when you lose respect for a person, then it's like, okay, no problem. I know the score. I know who you are. I know who I am. And you and I don't see eye to eye. And I don't have a relationship with you. Well, the same thing is here. Midan seeks to create this severing of the relationship between the Jew and Hashem. That's what Midan sought. So it's very different than just making a puncture of a particular area. That's his point. So yes, a puncture is a puncture, and it does weaken the name of God. So in other words, think of it this way. When I do an Aveda, whatever my Aveda is, it's not just my particular Aveda. It leaves a dent in the overall godly energy in the world. I have made God smaller in a sense because of my Aveda, but God is still here. The relationship is still here. With Midan, because the issue at hand is strife, sinas chinam, and all of that, it severs the relationship. That's why it touches the Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. Whereas my Taiva or my other Avera doesn't touch the Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, that the Yud-Kei Vav-Kei doesn't want to know about me anymore. Because I don't want to know about it. That's what he says. It is much more difficult. Look at the language. Iser. Kosher mi'od. You read the Rashab, after all of his explanation, he doesn't say impossible. It looks like you're falling asleep. Give yourself a good stand up and you won't sleep. Anyway, you must have you didn't sleep much last night. Anyway, it's much more difficult to correct this problem. And, we've spoken about this, Moshe, how divisiveness, strife, it's like the worst thing. It's like you write off the person. You write off the person. It's like, so everything good that you'll say about him, others will say about him, you say, so what? Big deal. Big deal. Big deal. Because the person is not a person by you. You've lost respect. And he says, Gambi Surya Torah, that Klippus Midan is worse than anything, even of prohibitions in the Torah. Well, that's a heavy statement. The proof to this is Moshe Nemer, Risha, Moshe Gimel, Moshe Golus, Rishon Shehoya Alavoinus Chaburin. Yes, the first exile, when we were exiled, was because of severe prohibitions. The Gemara says that. Davodah Zorah, what type of prohibitions? Idol worship, Vigilui Arayis, and forbidden relationships, V'shvichas damim, and murder. That's why God destroyed, the Talmud says, Moshe, that's why God destroyed the first temple. He said, you Jews who are involved in these three prohibitions, you don't deserve a temple. has the Romans destroy it. It was only destroyed for 70 years. During the 70 years, they rebuilt. Tiknu Abgamim. Why? Because we Jews corrected our mistakes during those 70 years. We realized that we caused the destruction because of sins in these three categories. So we bettered ourselves, we improved ourselves in those ways, in those three areas. Hashem said, okay, so now it's time, I'll rebuild you the second. I'll make the second Beis Hamikdash, the second temple be built. The Golus HaAchrei, now we come to the last exile, which we're in, Hazeh Shehu Al Sinas Chinam. This is because of baseless hatred. I don't like you because I don't like the color of your pants that you're wearing today. And as it's known in the Talmud, that because of the baseless hatred during the second temple, the Gemara in Gittin, remember the story of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa? Mark, there's a great story in the Gemara, and it speaks about the rabbi made a feast, and the person, his name was Kamsa, I think, and he invited everyone, and he had someone that he hated named Bar Kamsa, and somehow there was a feast, and a person made a feast, and he had a friend named Kamsa, and he had someone he hated, Bar Kamsa. And what happened was, instead of the friend coming named Kamsa, the enemy came, his enemy, his name was Bar Kamsa. And he threw him out. And the Talmud says, you should learn this section of Talmud, it's in Gittin, I think page 55. I think that's my youth memory. Anyway, the Gemara says that he begged him, and he begged the rabbis to go over to the host and say, look, I'll pay you for the food. And then he said, I'll pay you for, I think I pay you for maybe the cost of the party, but don't embarrass me in public. And you know what he did? He said no, and he embarrassed him in public, and he had him thrown out removed from the party hall. And after that, he said, if this is the situation, I'm going to go tell the Roman emperor, the Roman representatives about what the Jews are doing and all that. And that caused them to destroy the second temple. Which basically means that it came because of baseless hatred. Because you don't like me, so you embarrass me in public. Yes, Hillel.
Just want to comment that this week's parsha is the birth of Midan.
Elaborate. Come on, elaborate. Explain, please.
He's one of the sons of Avram and Keturah.
Who's that? Tell me who they are.
Avram Avinu is the forefather of our nation, and Keturah was according to Rashi, was Hagar, the Shifcha of the maid, mother of Yishmael.
Right. Keturah was the maid of Abraham, who became the mother of Ishmael. And you're saying that they were the father, he was the father figure of the nation Midan, correct?
Right, yeah.
Right.
That after the passing of Sarah, that Yitzchak goes and brings Keturah to be a wife for Abraham, and she has, I don't remember how many sons. They're called the Bnei HaPilagshim, and Abraham sends them to the east when he at the end and nations and
right. And Rashi says that's how the Eastern religions got their amulets and superstitions and powers, was when Avram sent her to the east. Okay, let's go back to the text. Thank you very much for that information. Okay? And he says, V'nimshech hagolus hamar yoser, hamar, and this last exile continues to be yoser miyutches me'eshonim, more than 1800 years. Now, you know, when the Rashab wrote this, it was in 1898. But now it's 100 years later, so now it's not 1800 years, it's 1900 years. So you just, yeah, it's unfortunate, but that's what the shot. V'hainu, we're in the middle of chapter Yud Zayin, 17.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay, good. V'hainu bnei shehapagam u'bechlos. And he says, as we said earlier, why is this exile schlepping on and on and on and on? It's because the blemish is not to a particular problem that's correctable. It's to the overall issue, hatred, baseless hatred, divisiveness, strife. I'm better than you. Your father's greater than me. My Rebbe is bigger than you. We have more Hasidim. My shul's better than your shul. All nonsense. But that's the reason. That's what he says. If you want to add, because the Rebbe, I remember so many times cried out, he doesn't understand why the exile is going on and on. Yeah, you know, the Rebbe was like beseeching God to forgive us, you know, because if you're going to wait for us to all get along, it ain't happening. It's unfortunate, but you know, that's in a sense the human condition is jealousy, this, that. So Hashem, you know that, you made us. So don't look there and see our positive side. But the Rashab says here that this is why Klippas Midan is the most negative one, because it opposes it stands for divisiveness and strife. Let's continue. Therefore the Torah says that Hashem says to Moshe, fight this war to take revenge of the Yud Kei Vav Kei that has been tarnished by Midan. Because they oppose and they're contrary to the general name of Yud Kei Vav Kei. That's why this war, and only this war against Midan, is actual revenge for the damaging and tarnishing and blemishing of the Yud Kei Vav Kei. Mamish, he says, literally. One of the questions that we asked, why was this war necessary? Hashem, this commandment in the Torah is to Moshe Rabbeinu, our teacher. Why? Why couldn't Aaron do it? Why couldn't the elders do it? Says the Rebbe, that's why the commandment was specifically to Moshe. Moshe, this is your namesake. You see, now we know why you're such a great, humble guy, Mark. Because Moshe was the real epitome of humility. And the concept of unity. It wasn't just an external humility. His essence, from his essence perspective, from his central perspective, his soul, he was all about humility. And therefore, he displayed that in his lifetime in various ways. But what was Moshe's soul all about? Humility. So that's why Hashem places the onus on Moses, on Moshe, because Hashem gives him koyach. Hillel, do mute yourself. Who dafke noyach koyach b'neshamas Yisrael. Hashem gives Moshe the ability lilchaim in Midan ulevarim, to battle Midan and to obliterate them. In other words, here's the point. If Hashem would have told Aaron, you battle Midan, he wouldn't be able to accomplish taking revenge for the Yud Kei Vav Kei. You know why? Because Aaron is Chesed, Aaron's Kohen, whatever. Aaron doesn't represent Bittul Atzmi. He has other important issues. But Bittul Atzmi is inherent in Moshe. And in order to fight and oppose and eliminate this concept of strife, you have to get to the essential humility. If you don't touch the essential humility, then you'll always find differences between people, and which will lead to strife and divisiveness. So if you want to eliminate strife and divisiveness, you have to have the person who leads the charge of this type of war, not only a physical war, but a spiritual war, an individual who embodies this activity, the activity known as bittul atzmi, essential humility. And who is that? Moshe. That's why Hashem says to Moshe, you lead the Jews in the war against Midan. Continuing. And that's why Moshe was charged to appoint soldiers, people. He said to go out to the army from each tribe. So we had a question. What's this language? Me'itchem. Hechaltzu, which means get ready, come to war. Me'itchem, right? From among you. This indicates that only a limited number of Jews would be actually participating in the war against Midan. Why does it say me'itchem? Nevertheless, the hechaltzu mashma kuchem. If it would say, the word hechaltzu implies everyone is charged to fight Midan, right? Everyone together. Contrary to the divisiveness and division that Midan seeks to create, we're all going to battle Midan. And through this, they could fight Midan, through the achdus, the unity, losses nikvas Hashem b'Midan, to exact retribution from Midan. So, I want to point out one thing here. So that's why he says, Hechaltzu me'itchem. Okay. No, he's saying like this. I'm sorry, I didn't explain well. Right. Even though it says Hechaltzu me'itchem, find pioneers from among you, implying that not everyone went out to war, he says, but Hechaltzu implies achdus. So if I understand correctly, in other words, who went to war? Who went to war? Did all the Jews go to war? No. From each group, there were people who were drafted to go to war against Midan. But he's saying that although, I think this is what he's saying, although there were only a limited amount of people that went out to battle the war, but everyone, even those that didn't go out, they were united with the idea that we have to fight Midan. Yes, sir.
I would suggest that ultimate bittul includes the unity, meaning it includes the entire people. When somebody is mevatel legamrei, so he's united with everybody. That's the me'itchem, is inclusive of everybody, even though Moshe did select the people to go out to the battle, because he was representative of that aspect of bittul, which is all inclusive.
Right, I understand that, but practically, not all the Jews went out to war. Right?
But they were, so to speak, represented in Moshe Rabbeinu's nullification.
Right. That's what I said. How? Because they all agreed that this is what needs to be done. They were all united in the plan to fight Midan. In other words, even those that stayed back and didn't go, for whatever reason, it was as though they were also fighting through whatever they were doing. But in concept, they were together. What you're referring to is what he says in the Mimer, that since Moshe was the one who led them in war, and Moshe is about bittul, So it was the bittul element that succeeded in the war, right? Isn't that what you're saying?
Not quite. I'm saying that Me'itchem was made possible through Moshe's bittul.
Yeah, but Isser, Me'itchem implies not everybody, and Moshe's bittul is everybody.
Yeah.
So if it's everybody, everyone should go to war.
Contradiction. I don't see.
Then why didn't everyone go? If
everybody didn't have to go.
but that's the question. That's exactly the question. How, if you say Moshe represents unity of everybody, then everyone should go. Everyone didn't go. What do you mean? Why?
Why should everybody go?
Because then it's like it's part A and part B. Some go, some don't go.
He becomes the representative, and in his Nesius,
yeah,
he selects those people who also are representative of the concept of unity.
Okay.
And they are.
Okay. So we're okay. Let me just read the Kitzur. Kitzur clip. Actually, tomorrow we'll do that and a few of the notes here. Okay. Tomorrow you're not going to be here, Issa, right? Right. Okay, but hopefully Hillel and some other few will be here. Sei gesund. Have a great day, everyone. Shalom. Bye.